Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, Pat and I are going to be doing a round of Q&A, but before we dive in, I have an announcement for all of you. Saturday, August 5th, we are hosting our very first Storm Riders Community Day. This was a suggestion from our Discord, and it's all about engaging with you, our community, in fun, perhaps unique, hilarious ways, in a variety of different ways. So we'll be doing a stream live recording of Call Your Hits. We'll be doing drop-in participation by some people in the chat or the community, as well as a Call Your Hits bingo game, I'm told, which I'm not organizing. Someone's figuring out. I'll also hopefully,
no.
yeah, buckle up. I hopefully will also be coming to you live from the Airsoft field that day when we play on Saturday, if indeed we do play that day. And you might even get to select parts of my outfit. So who knows? There's going to be activities spread out throughout the day as well to accommodate all our community members from around the world, so in different time zones and stuff like that. And as we get closer, we'll release a schedule of activities so you can see what you're interested in and so on and so forth. We're also going to be giving away some Storm Riders stuff like patches, magnets, stickers, etc. So, I mean, if you've been an avid viewer of the podcast, you will have seen me show off the community patches, which most of you have picked up, which is great. We also have some very exclusive stickers, such as this Storm Riders glitter sticker. We have some holographic stickers as well that you can't buy. So these will be community day things only, and we're just really thrilled to be doing. I think this is a really great idea. It was suggested in the Discord for us to do something like that, and it's all about you guys as well. So if there's anything that you think would be fun to do with us, whether it's just hanging out on a stream or on voice chat, or doing a sort of like a try not to laugh challenge where you send us funny videos and we try not to laugh, or anything else, make sure you hop on the Discord and let us know in the suggestion channels what you would like to see. So
we can stream you beating me at Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, gaming is totally on board too, if there's something you want to do. So guys, thank you for suggesting this day to us, and hopefully many of you will get a chance to join us. So it's really, really cool. So with that being said, we are going to hop on the meat of the episode, which is the Q&A. So the first question that I want to touch on is something actually that came up on the Discord I think in the last week or week and a half, 2 weeks. And it was this notion of, do you need to be fit to play Airsoft? And I think this is a topic that comes up fairly regularly in Airsoft circles in a variety of different flavors. Should you expect airsofters to have a minimum standard of fitness? Can you be out of shape or overweight and still be a good airsofters? How fit do you need to play airsoft? How many push-ups do you need to play airsoft? This question comes up in a lot of different ways. And I think it comes from the idea that, we're doing some sort of military simulation. Soldiers do boot camps or basic military qualifications in which they do physical activities and they get fit and stuff like that. So should airsofters do the same thing? And the most recent discussion came from talking about teams that have a basic fitness requirement to participate in team activities at Milsim West, for example, the team I think that Eric was talking to us about called Task Force Keg. And their approach to that is very, very inclusive. They have multiple sort of tiers of activity levels, etc. But it's not to exclude people, but rather to make sure that if they're going to do a certain thing at a certain game, that everyone is capable of having fun and engaging, right, at that level.
Yeah, to me, that just reads as sort of a know yourself, know your limits kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And, speaking as definitely the person on our team who has been, the widest range of fitness levels. Because I've been playing Airsoft long enough that I've been playing Airsoft while I was running 20K a week, and weighed 160 pounds, which was definitely a healthier me. And I've played it
in some ways, I would say, not in all ways.
And I've played it, at my current 2-round sort of play point. And I think that the answer is, you know, what do you want to get out of it? You know, and how much are you like working towards it? So like if you are going to airsoft and you're like, man, I can't like jog the straight length that I need to jog, cardio. You know, if you go to airsoft and, you know, you're like me and it's like, man, taking a knee sucks, not because I'm a big dude, but because my knees are terrible, because I've destroyed them. That's, you know, yeah, go see a doctor, like figure some of that out, try to make that less of a problem. But like you can play airsoft in a wheelchair, arguably, depending on the field you're playing on. You can play airsoft, I think, at any fitness level. You know, I think that, yeah, like there's probably the fitter, the healthier you are, like not even necessarily the fitter as such, but like if you have enough strength to hold your gun up for a long period of time, you're going to find that makes playing easier and better.
Yeah.
If you find that like you can crouch down for long periods, that's going to make playing more comfortable, better. You know, so like I feel like this is a gatekeepery kind of question, and I hate it in the sense that I feel like people, and you know, this is partly like I've been a big round guy for a lot of my life. I've had to put up with a lot of bullshit because of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And yeah, you know, there's stuff Steph can do that I can't do because he's a skinny dude, or that Phil can do because he's fit, right? But there's also stuff that I can do because I'm a 6 foot tall ogre, like 6'2" large human.
Yeah, and
that,
let's take it in the other way for a second.
There.
Just because someone is light, just because someone is, you know, skinny, etc., that also does not mean that they are capable of running or doing, you know, the physical activities that they may be required. And I think expecting people when they show up to do a hobby that they should look in a particular way or perform a particular way, I think is unfair in general. Yeah. However, the flip of that is if you want to create a team where you create this arbitrary level of fitness that is everyone on the team is okay with in order for you to do certain things, to push a particular way, or then, you know, more power to you. But I think the first part of the question, which is, you know, do you need to be fit to play airsoft? The answer is flat out no. You absolutely do not. There is no requirement whatsoever. Does it help in certain contexts? Absolutely. Does it not matter in other contexts? Also, absolutely. Right? It really depends, like you were saying. What do you want to get out of it? Because even right now, you might be better at doing certain things that someone who is objectively quote unquote fitter, but they, you know, like you're still very effective. Because I think there's this, you know, there's this misconception that if you're overweight or you're not fit, you're not very effective, or you're not effective. Are you perhaps less effective than you would be if you weren't in that particular position? Sure, but that doesn't mean that if you compare to other people, that's where the problem begins, right? Because it's only the comparison to yourself. When I look at, for example, what I can do on the field now compared to what I could do, you know, let's say 4 years ago, well, I can run a lot further. My endurance is much higher. But if you could compare myself to what I could do 10 years ago when I was going to the gym, I could lift myself over a wall much faster, or at all, point blank. Where now, you know, I can't do those things. Is that ultimately relevant to where we play? Like, I can run 20K. Great. Okay. Our field is like 400 meters long. Like,
he can just run laps of the field for a while. It'll be fine.
Right.
I mean,
so yeah, there's a lot of that.
You know, it's also like, you know, we've got that wicked video of one of our guys, of Matt doing, you know, like baseball slides in the snow and stuff, right? Like, doesn't matter. When I was skinny, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Right
exactly.
now, I can't do that. And it's like my knee, like I think I've made this joke before, but like my right leg, just the bottom half will drop off and lie there. And I'll be like, what do I do now?
Well, since it's attached to the rest of you. Yeah, that's a problem.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it will cease to function. So like, yeah, I think there are two ways I want to come at this, right? Like, one of them is, so if you're looking at yourself and going, man, do I need to be fitter to play airsoft? If your level of fitness is affecting your enjoyment of play, yeah, you do. Right? Flat, right?
That's a really good way of putting that.
You know,
really good way.
actively working on, I mean, I'm trying to get back to being able to do push-ups because I destroyed my shoulder. Physio is fun. um, but, you know, I'm going for a walk. I'm going for a jog, right? You know, currently, like, you know, Phil said a couple weeks ago, I'm running lamppost to lamppost on the street, right? Like I'm not getting very far, but that's a hell of a lot better than being sedentary, which is where I was 2 months ago, right? Where 2 months ago I was, you know, like walking around work was the closest I was getting to real like active exercise. You know, that was really honestly a work-life balance thing for me, but like that's helped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're looking at people and going, man, that dude needs to be more fit to play airsoft. Like if they're on your team and your team has a fitness standard, then like I talk to them, but like be kind about it. You know, if you're just looking at people and being judgy, there's a really great quote from Marcus Aurelius, of all people, and like I'm not necessarily into ancient Roman stoicism all the time. There's some good, some bad, as with most ancient philosophy, but self-discipline is called self-discipline for a reason.
Yeah.
Right?
And
That first word is important, you know?
yeah. And you know, you said something as well. Like if you have a team and you have a fitness standard on your team, like Ambo was talking to us about a team that he wants to put together for Border War, where as a recce team they'll be doing like a 16K, like, you know, sortie or whatever you call it, like mission, etc., over the course of a couple hours. Well, if you're going to do that, you need to have individuals who are capable of doing that, like, you know, carrying whatever load they're going to carry over 16K over a short period of time. And in that context, like, yeah, you need to make sure that people are capable of doing that. Same thing with Task Force Keg. When we were talking to Eric about it, like, they're very much like very, very inclusive and etc. But the reality is, like, if you're going to be doing some of the more physically challenging things, you need to be physically capable of it. In the same way that you're not going to go from whatever fitness level you are today with, let's say you're walking a couple of times a week, you're jogging lamppost to lamppost, and next week or next month even say, I'm going to run a marathon. It's not going to happen.
No,
right?
like, you know,
if you delude yourself into thinking you're going to, then that's challenging for you because you're probably not going to have a very good time. And I've known people in the running community who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to take on this massive goal and I'm going to not train. I'm just going to do it. And like a good example of that is Chris on our team. Chris is very athletic. He doesn't run a whole lot, but he ran the Tele 10, which is 10 miles or 16K with me this year with very little training. But dude does a lot of physical work. He's very strong physically, and he muddled through it, and he did, you know, just a perfectly reasonable time, especially given the conditions, right? But I've also known people who were not physically fit at all, and are like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this. It's next month. Let's do it. I'm like, I don't think that that's a very wise idea for you. You're more likely to injure yourself. That's a completely different conversation, I think, than saying, oh, well, you need to be fit to play airsoft. Completely different things. And I think you said something earlier that's very, very salient is whatever your fitness level is, right? It's all about you. And if it's impacting your ability to have fun at airsoft, then you need to decide whether you want to do something about it. It's not up to you to tell anybody else what they do or don't need to do. But fundamentally, I think that has to be the guidepost for people. Is my physical level, whatever that is, whether that's you're overweight, whether it's your cardio sucks, whether you holding your rifle up for like an hour, it's like, oh my God, my shoulders are gone or my forearms are gone. Like whatever that is, right? If that's, if that is hampering your fun, or, you know, one thing we have seen a lot too is people with low endurance, right? And because we play 15, 20-minute games, we saw that at Last Refuge, right? After like 3 hours, people were smoked.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
and
yeah, no duh, right?
And, you know, like, and I'm not meaning this in like a denigrating those folks way, but like also lots of those people didn't do the smart thing and bring a bag of Skittles because they either didn't know or didn't think about the fact that like having some, you know, quick into your body energy available for your 8-hour game of airsoft is probably an okay idea.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
You know, but, you know, it's, yeah, some of it's mindset, right? Like I can and will hump my gear for the duration of the day, and I don't really care how tired I get. Like, you know, that's a problem for post-game Pat.
Yes.
You know, and some days I'd say like, all right, cool, I'm going home and sleeping. till tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's about personal understanding of like yourself and your goals. And, you know, as someone who has, you know, tried being healthier a bunch of ways, you know, it's about forming good habits. It's about being kind to yourself, because otherwise you won't form good habits. You know, I think that the way I choose to look at it, airsoft can be, and regularly for me, is a good motivator to, yeah, like, let's go get a little healthier, a little better cardio, a little better, you know, a little stronger, so that I can crouch down behind cover for 30 minutes and not be crippled.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, like, the bottom line for me is it really needs to be about making this hobby more fun for yourself.
Totally. Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to the second question. This one I thought is a fun one, I think. What is a piece of advice that you give everyone with respect to airsoft, but don't actually listen to yourself?
Oh, man.
So I've got one in mind, so I can give you a second if you want to
sure.
sort of mull it over. For me, I mean, to be honest, like we're kind of like opening the library, as they say, right? You're going to get read a bit. But for me, it has to be gear maintenance. I will tell you, and I do believe it's a great idea, like maintaining your gear is really important. Like when you get home from an airsoft game, make sure you take time to like wipe down your kit if it got wet, and like unload your mags, and like take the time to clean out your mags. And I tend not to do that myself, to be completely honest. Like when I get home from a game, I unload my mags if it's not already done. And I just sort of toss my gear in the garage in their appropriate buckets or bins, and that's it. You know, we talk about like yearly maintenance on our airsoft guns, and like I really don't do as much as I really should, and I know that I should. I just, dude, I can't be bothered. Like it's just such a pain.
I mean, yeah, like Phil's definitely a ride it hard and put it away wet user in terms of his airsoft gear.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put that.
You know, and like speaking as his most typical gun tech, like I've known that forever. Whatever. You know, has it caused us some like grief over the years? Probably. Meaningfully,
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there's like when I was working on my rifle today, like taking the Kythera out, like some of the screws on there were a little rusty from the last game that we played because it was a bit wet. And
that's like, also just like so the quality of the parts used in airsoft guns, coupled with the fact that we live on an island, literally surrounded by ocean, where like you're never ever like we used to play on a cliff. Where, you know, if I got angry enough, I could probably yeet my gun into the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
So like the salt water in the air is a thing. You know, we now play next to a swamp. So like
it's humid.
Yeah, like there's only so much you can do about that anyway. I'm a little more meticulous about that. You know, I will admit that like sometimes it's like 3 hours later because I get home and I'm like, Pat, sleep 4 hours before airsoft. Pat, nap now.
Yes.
You know, the life of a person who deals with insomnia and still wants to go play airsoft. But, you know, for ages, you know, I mean, honestly, even like while we were recording some of the earlier pieces of this podcast, I definitely said a lot like, yeah, buy good boots for airsoft, and like was wearing, like at the time, 10-year-old, like they're Blackhawk Combats. They're great. They don't have a lot of visible wear on them, but like, if I apply the squishy thing in here to the problem, 10-year-old boots that you've been wearing like for, you know, 30 or 40 hours a summer, plus anytime you go hiking for 10 years, and I go hiking, you know, like half regularly, is probably a pair of boots you shouldn't be using for intensive physical activity anymore, right? And like, so for ages I didn't do the hiking boots to airsoft thing, even though I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I do now, but like I'm saying this and I'm like, I should buy new hiking boots.
Yeah, yes.
Like, those are a couple of years old. You know, and that's not like a huge like black eye, I guess, but it's factual. Other than that, I don't know. Like, I think I actually like mostly practice what I preach. Like, I think I'm pretty open about the fact that I don't do as many ready ups as I should, but I do more than none.
Yeah, and I
Um,
was gonna say that too. Like, we talk a lot about ready ups, and I think they are very important. How many do I actually do? Like, I mean, I was last year. I think I was trying to do like several. I don't know, the number 25 a week or something like that, just to keep up. And I definitely don't do that many. But it's like you said, it's more than none. Um, but I definitely do them, right? So I think that's the at the end of the day, like I tell people to do ready ups, and I still do them. It's just given how much I say it, you might expect that I do way more, but that's just not the
I mean,
case.
there's also just like, I think, especially because we are, content creators who are creating content about yourself, people are like, oh my God, like they must do this all the time. Um, I mean, you can see in the frame behind me, like I have too many stupid hobbies
Yeah,
and I love it.
legit.
But like, like I do, if I'm being honest, like I do a lot of ready ups because I'm like, and like movement practice in my house, like corner practice and stuff, because I'm a dork and it feels good. Um, you know, and like, does that have an effect on like how well I can hump the 249 for like protracted periods? Honestly, yeah, probably. Like the amount of time it spends like just doing ready ups periodically is higher than people might think. Partly because I'm like, I need to practice this. This thing weighs a ton.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, like real boy talk. It's an M249. Like ready, pull trigger.
Yeah, really.
Like especially like prior to getting the HPA engine to put in it, and I still haven't got that like completely sorted, but prior to getting that, like the MOA was a laughable idea more so than like an effective thing.
Hmm.
So I think really we're talking about a situation where that like it gets more ready up time than arguably it needs.
It needs, yeah, totally.
um
Yes,
but
absolutely.
like it's fun.
Mm.
um and like I do regular maintenance on my kit because, and I think part of this is like more that I'm a gun tech, and so I have more like brain time committed to it regularly, that where I think about it, and I'm like,
And I
oh yeah,
would
I
say
should do
too,
that.
just as a side note, I think too, because you're so familiar with it, the amount of energy that it requires you, mental energy, I mean, to actually maintenance your gear is quite low,
Totally.
right? Because it's just old hat. Whereas for me, like even what I was doing in like Kythera today was like required my full attention. And yeah, so like that's if you're like, I'm not comfortable, or it's like, oh god, I don't have the energy to do that. Whereas for you, you could do that like watching a movie or whatever. Like that's not the case for me. So that will sort of dictate. And then I'm not making excuses. I'm just, it is what it is, right? That's for me, like you said, it gets just put away dirty, more or less. um and then every now and then, like I do make sure, the one thing I absolutely always make sure of, and if it doesn't happen, it's because I have made an error. But like almost every single time, I'd say 99% of the time, my mags get unloaded. At the very least, I unload my mags. I tend to do that at the field because I know that if I don't, when I get home, I'm not going to have the wherewithal to do it.
And
But yeah,
that's important, right? That is the same kind of thing as putting your gym shoes by your work stuff when you go out in the morning, so that you don't forget them, so you don't have an excuse to go home instead,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's just know what you may or may not be bad about doing and deal with it appropriately. Great.
Well, it's like you were saying earlier. It's about creating those habits, right? That set you up for success rather than cause you to have to spend more energy.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
Like a useful thing that I do, like, so I did an end of season like closeout for my gear, which was basically just making sure the batteries were out of my optics, and like the no springs were under tension that shouldn't be under tension, stuff like that. That's a good idea. I did a beginning of season like, is shit working? I'm still in the middle of that because two of the guns still aren't working. I've been at time of recording, I've been house sitting for most of the period between this recording and the episode about my first game of the season, which has meant that I couldn't play because bringing my gear to like my friend's home seemed like a thing they probably wouldn't like their neighbors probably would be sketched out by.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like I had to look after the cats, so like the cats in question are very, very spoiled. So I was like, you know, but like that, you know, situation will get resolved over like this week, I hope, this week and next week certainly. But yeah, you know, I'm also sometimes saltier than I would like to be at Airsoft. Like that's definitely a thing that, like, you know, and it's weird because there's a lot of stuff I'm chill about, but like my shit breaking is not one of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know, like the middle of game going, God damn it, you were working. Why aren't you working? Is definitely
Very
a
frustrating.
feeling. But like, yeah, I think that's mostly the self-criticism I would apply is like, yeah, I let some of the stuff that like I think of as critical go longer in the tooth than it should.
Yeah. All right, next question. So this one may or may not be short, but it is, how many smoke grenades do you carry and how do you carry them? 0, and I don't. Right? That's that's the short answer. I think for Pat as well, like I don't recall you. Yeah.
I have spaces on my kit that I could and would tuck them.
Oh yeah, I got pockets too, but
yeah, like pockets. I would probably, like, if I really felt like I needed some for a specific thing, I could probably tuck them into, like, just strip a couple of my mag pouches and tuck them in there. You know, and just frankly put those mags in the pockets for later if I need them.
Yeah.
But in like point of practicality, at least the ones that we have access to, which are like the
Enola Gay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like,
is like they're
the small ones.
Yeah, they're like the small or the bigger, like paintball field sells them to you kind. And I love having them, like having access to them for scenario games. It's actually in my little notebook list of like stuff to ask for our next op is to like have some of those, because I feel like they actually create good atmosphere because the smoke sort of lingers around and looks cool if it's not windy as hell. But in terms of like practical value for providing me cover, or like the utility that I think of as smoke grenades providing in actual combat, you know, they don't output enough volume quickly enough. Like I'd need 3 or 4 of them to be getting enough smoke to do what I want, and even then, it's not going to be quickly enough.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I've never been in a situation playing Airsoft. I've been in lots of situations playing Airsoft where I thought, man, a smoke grenade here would be really great. And in my mind, I'm thinking of a like real world smoke grenade, like that actually creates concealment.
And I'm going to say, just for fun, like I agree with that, but I'm not even thinking of that because I have no bloody idea what a real smoke grenade looks like. I am thinking of what they look like in movies.
Yeah, I've only ever seen one real smoke grenade one time. And I took pictures, we took pictures with it, etc. And that was legit. Like that was so like, okay, so I can't see the players and they're like, okay, walk forward through the smoke. And they just emerge from this cloud of just that looks basically like a wall of fog. And I was like, wow, that was really, really effective. I've seen that one time. And once you see that, and then you see like one of the ones that they use at the field, you're like, oh, that doesn't actually do anything.
Yep.
So like you said, though, they're really cool for creating ambiance. They're really cool for like marking objectives in a cool like way. Like, for example, I wanted to have one on tap. If one of the teams managed to destroy one of the buildings, you pop it in there. It's like, oh, it's on fire or whatever. Like that would be cool.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, if we had enough of them for this to be like viable, having it so that like, you know, you signal to command that you've taken an objective by popping your team's color smoke would be rad. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's value for that. But like, unless you're getting smoke grenades that are significantly better than the ones we have access to, I don't carry one. And like every situation I've wanted one of those where I feel like it would have provided me enough cover, I also feel like a airsoft frag grenade would have provided me enough cover.
Yeah. I really do feel that when it comes to the smoke grenades, like the ones that are available here, like firstly, they're expensive. I don't know what they're like in the rest of the world, but for us, I mean, I think they're like $13 or $14 Canadian a pop. which is quite a lot of money, and for what they do in terms of the tactical benefit they provide, which is essentially zero.
Yeah, I'll happily pay $13 when like Phil and Jason have their cameras there and we're getting cool
totally
footage. But like from a gameplay point of view, I don't think they're super practical.
Yeah, I agree.
And like it's possible again, like, you know, there are probably places where that's less true. You know, if you are playing a lot in like indoor CQB environments where it actually outputs enough cubic feet of smoke to like make a difference quickly, maybe. But
if you're even allowed to set them off, I was about to say,
but like I also don't want to huff too much of that stuff. So like maybe your field won't let you do that. I don't know.
Or they set off the smoke alarms and the fire department comes. Like it just
Yep.
Regardless,
also bad.
Yeah, it's not something that we carry. It's not something that we find is tactically useful. The ones that are, you know, legal for us to use. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. This next one, it's not really a question, but it's a comment that I saw on one of our videos. And I didn't like it. It made me feel certain things, certain ways about it. And I wanted to share it and talk about it because I think it's a good point of discussion. The comment was on a video that we had done. And I mean, this is not a mean comment by any stretch of the imagination. I get tons of mean comments and they never see the light of day. But this comment in particular. So this was on a video that we'd done several years ago, which was on like Chris and I and another player like doing a 3-on-3 in the village or whatever. And then it was all about how Chris and I were communicating really well, or at least we thought we were communicating really well. And so this person said, 6 people is a small group of people. Where I play, there's at least 30 people going. And I wanted to speak to this comment because it's very easy to comment about how Airsoft is in other places compared to your place that you play Airsoft in without understanding the reality of those particular communities. And I think since we started the Discord and we started broadening sort of our view of what Airsoft looks like around the world, I've come to realize that I used to hold this idea that, oh, Airsoft sucks in Newfoundland because we don't have very many players. Airsoft is better everywhere else. And you, even in certain situations where I think, you know, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we felt this way for sure, that, you know, it's not just that our community sucks, but because we play here, we can't possibly be any good in the big picture of Airsoft and Airsofters. And everyone else must be way better than we are because they play quote unquote real games with real numbers and stuff. And I that comment really brought that forward to me because I know that in speaking to our Discord community, we have players who play regularly at games where like large numbers for them is 12 to 15 players, like much like we did for many, many years. Totally. Right.
And I mean, it's funny because like this bothered Phil. And my response to that comment, not that I saw it, frankly, but like is yes and like,
yeah,
you know, it's like, oh, that's not a ton of bully for you. Like, you know, 3-on-3 is enough people to play a fun, quick game of Airsoft.
And I would say that a 6-person game can be just as fun as a 30-person game or a 100-person game. The numbers certainly create different opportunities, but they're not necessarily better. They're just different.
Yeah.
And, you know, you know, people talked about like, you know, Milsim games, like in the States, for example, where they're like, everybody leaves on the second day or lots of people leave on the second day. Like, that sucks. Like, why would you, you know, like, and that's my initial reaction is like, why are you coming to a game and only staying for one day and then leave? Like, but to them, that's their normal. So who am I to go, okay, well, no, that's stupid. Like your community sucks if they leave. Like this doesn't help anyone for one thing. And then secondly, the realities are always going to be different everywhere. Right. And so if you're reading comments from other people about where you play Airsoft going, oh, your scene, your community is super small, that sucks. Or people leave on the second day, that sucks, or whatever, that makes you feel like, oh, somehow you're less than. And that's so not true. Yep. Right? Like you said like you said just now, Pat, I should say, like, yes, all that is true. So what? Like, that doesn't change whether or not Airsoft is fun for you, whether you enjoyed it. Like, if 6 players Airsoft sucked objectively, I never would have started.
Yep.
Right? Like, I would have stopped and been like, oh my God, this is garbage, and never would have played again.
And, you know, in terms of the idea of like, because, you know, we've definitely had it, right? Like, you know, oh, you know, maybe are we any good at this? Like, we don't really know. Look at that 300-person game. Yeah, we are okay at this. You know, some days we're good. Some days probably even better than, right? Like if you're really on, or if I'm really on, because we've had teammates who we play against go to big things, big events, and do fine, right? Like, but it's also one of these things where I go, yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, like if you want to come to our YouTube and like go, oh, I'm gonna flex on it because I play bigger games, okay, have fun. Like,
yeah, totally.
Like if that makes you happy, great, man. Cheers. You know, it's like every time we post a video with me in it, there's at least one like, oh, look at that fat dude comment. I let my students write an assignment every year in which they are allowed to roast me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like the only rule on that assignment is if you're going to make a fat joke, you get a 0 if I've heard it before, because I've heard too many of them. Like,
I think the reason that I want to talk about this is not so much that
like me for my big nose.
Well, yeah, it's Cyrano over here. Let's chill for a second. But the reason I want to talk about this one in particular is not so much because it bothered me, because it really doesn't. Like, I mean, I've been told lots of stuff that, you know, like I've been called lots of different stuff. I've been told that I have a voice that sounds like peeing into a urinal, like a bunch of different stuff, right? But
so that was just weird.
By the way, that was the best one. I'm like, I've never heard this. But anyways, I digress.
How do I even interpret that?
Well, and the reason I want to talk about this is because, like, you can say whatever. Like, I don't care ultimately. Like, I don't know you. I have a life, whatever. But this point of view that this person is expressing, I think really misunderstands the point and the reality of what this hobby overall is. I mean, shocker, someone on the internet is misunderstanding something. But I think it's also the one that is the most potentially harmful for other people to read.
Totally.
And to look at that and go, oh, so he thinks he plays in really big games and I have a small community and I thought these guys were cool and I thought that made me cool. Oh, okay, I guess not then. Like, that's stupid. Like, if you watch our content and you're like, oh, they only play with six players too and they have these great games, yeah, that's awesome. Like, way to go. Like, we just had our biggest game of the year that had like 40 something players, right? And people go, oh, well, that's a Saturday skirmish for me. Well, great for you. It was awesome for us. We had a great time.
Yep.
And so we really want to create this idea that, like when I had, you know, Rob from Gunfather Milsim on the podcast, he introduced me to this idea, this expression, I should say, that airsoft is a big tent. There's room for everybody, right? And the more we hold on to that, right, the better it is, and the more fun people overall are going to have, whether they're playing games with 20 people, 200 people, 800 people, 10 people, doesn't matter.
And like, I also want to, you know, because there's a locally applicable piece of this for me, right? Like right now. So we've got a bunch of younger guys, you know, high school sort of age, who have all just gotten into airsoft, who are blowing up the local shops like what's in your store question page all the time, because they live like an hour and a half ish away from the field, right? Mm-hmm. And like they're still there most weeks, they're still like coming out to play then, but like they're also like, hey, you know, I'm out in a really rural area where I have access to like a stretch of dirt that no one minds me and my friends playing on, so we're playing there. They're having fun. And like anyone who is going to look at them and go, well, you're not having the right kind of fun. Cool. Right? Like, the right kind of fun is a daft idea.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, if you are there playing with like Walmart spring pistols and you and your friends are having a laugh, you're doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. All right. I got two more questions. This is the Ship of Theseus question. How do you determine if it's better to keep upgrading your replica rather than simply looking for a new one? For those of you who are not familiar with the Ship of Theseus, I mean, Google it. We're not going to go into ancient Greek history on this podcast.
We've already done Roman Stoicism today. We're not doing this twice.
Exactly. It's too much classics for one episode. But yeah, so how do you determine if it's better to keep upgrading what you have rather than simply looking for something brand new?
It's a hard question, like genuinely. So I'm going to give you the tech answer, I think, which is, so like if the parts aren't physically worn in a way that is causing it not to work, there's no point at which you quote unquote need to go buy something new. If you get to the point where like there's visible wear on the magwell and like your mags are all loose fitting because you've worn the metal away doing reloads, A, how long have you had the gun? B, how long have you had the gun? But like, the body that Phil's Kythera is in, I have used for 6-7 years. It doesn't need a new external setup. In terms of internal components, do you have a reason for putting it in other than like a vague, I think I should upgrade something? And if you are right, I think I will change something for the sake of the fun of it, then you probably are a mad person who's going to enjoy teching airsoft stuff. Welcome. Because the answer is like, I have a Type 4 barrel that I'm going to put in the M27. That's a 6.01 that I bought to see if it's any better than the 6.03 that's in there. That was worth my time, right? Just for fun. Do I need a new gun body for that? Honestly, I don't expect that I will unless I actually physically break a part of it, which can happen. Like,
yeah.
We've seen people physically break their airsoft gun. Thankfully, we haven't physically broken anything ourselves. We've both, I say that, but then we have both worn out a gas pistol.
Yeah.
Now like we bought them both secondhand, so like they'd been used a great deal.
Yeah.
Before we got them, honestly. And then we use them also a great deal because they're really fun, but like we both had, like when I started playing airsoft, Phil had a KSC or KWA, I'm not sure which, HK USP. And I literally bought the same stuff he had because I was like, well, it's good enough for him, which has not actually been a bad approach for me other than the ergonomics of a couple of things. And we literally ran them until we couldn't make them work anymore.
That's exactly,
and
exactly
like
right.
they owed us nothing when we were done with them. They were super fun. And like gas blowback stuff does wear, right? Like if you're running propane through a TM pistol and you're actually using it a bunch, you're going to need to replace parts or get a new one or something periodically. Do we use our pistols as much as we did back in the day? Honestly, no. Like we have one of the funny things about changing from like a community where our average game size is 8 people to one where our average game size is like 16 to 20 is that our ability to go, hey, let's just all use our pistols this round is actually depleted because back in the day, everyone who was there had one because we were all sort of in the same kind of mindset about like what to buy and when and where. In terms of like looking at new airsoft replicas and going, oh, what should I buy? Or like, when should I buy a new one to upgrade? So if you're using an M4 and it has a plastic body and you're like, man, I really want to get this super duper dialed in, I think there are good arguments for upgrading to something with a metal one.
Yeah.
If you've got a metal body and a metal hop up and then like it's either you want to change the performance, you want to improve the performance or something, or, and like most of us are this person. Phil's not as much as I am for sure, but like there are days when I'm just like, shiny things. Yes.
Definitely. Yeah. I have those days too. I'm not immune. Like I was using that, King Arms Mark 18 for years. And then one day on Airsoft Marketplace, Canada on Reddit, someone was selling like a G&P Mott's M4, and I was like, wow, that looks great. It had a really cool rail. I wanted to pick it up. That was a complete nightmare, disaster. I mean, the sail and stuff was fine, and the rifle was fine. But as soon as we started upgrading it, it was just a complete.
It didn't like the
nightmare.
And this tracks back to.
It didn't like anything. It didn't like the Max. It didn't like the Lonex gearbox. Like it was just a nightmare. Yeah, but regardless,
it's just like none of the parts we tried to put in it.
Well, yeah, and like the reason that I bought that wasn't because I'm like, oh, well, I bet I'm better buying a new gun than upgrading the one I have. It's because, me shiny want. Like, it's like, I want something new. That was the only reason.
Totally.
I don't think
and there's nothing wrong
either
with that.
you, Well, yeah, and totally, that's not an indictment at all. I don't think there's ever been a situation where either you or I on our primary airsoft replica have replaced it because it was no longer possible to upgrade it. It was no longer fixable.
So
right?
with one exception, that's true. So I did switch off the Scar. I switched to an M16 because I liked the M16 better. Like I did that switch. The thing I selected to buy after the Scar
right.
Was picked like based on, frankly, what I'd used belonged to other people at the time and the desire to not have to sell my mags. But the Scar that I had, I did actually sell because the previous owner had glued one of the set screws in it and it couldn't be taken apart. And like it worked fine. It's to my knowledge, it still works fine. The guy who I sold it to doesn't use it very often, but it's still there. You know, but I couldn't put upgrades in it, and that is why I sold it. But
that's fair.
That's one gun out of the 8 or 9 I've owned, and it's the only one that I've sold because of that. Unless you count, I did some sort of thing. I don't actually remember what the specific context was where I got a VFC Scar H that also wouldn't come apart, as it turned out. And it was a short one. And I also, at the time, like I acquired that and a Scar SSR from Mark.
Oh yeah, I remember that time. Yeah.
And the outcome for that is that the like upper and lower central, the receiver components where the gearbox are in the basement because it just doesn't come apart. Like it's just scrap.
Yeah.
And I haven't thrown it out because I'm like, at some point I might like need a part out of this enough to saw it open and take it. I don't know. But one of my friends ultimately got a really, really good deal on what amounted to 2 front ends for a Scar. So he it can't be done in game or anything, but he can configure it into either the long or the short versions pretty freely, which is sick. You know, like, and there's value there. That's cool. But yeah, I aside from like a point where you physically can't take it apart because something has broken, or where you physically can't put it back together because something is broken, need is definitely pushing it. You know?
I would agree with that.
And like in terms of need to upgrade, yeah, that's a, like we've talked about that a bunch. It's its own separate case study.
Yeah, totally. All right, last question for the day. And this is actually a really good question. It came up on the Discord. And it's one that we talked about, I think, in at least one video, probably 2, but it's still, I think, a good topic for discussion. And so what this user said was, lately, I've been trying to get tips on how to get more kills because I've been out to play Airsoft 3 times now, but I've only gotten 1 kill. I still have a blast, but it would be so much more fun if I could get some more people out. And I think, firstly, I think we've all been there. I mean, if you played Airsoft 3 times, you're still quite new in your Airsoft journey. And so I think we did get some extra detail from this user as well. So I think step 1 in any sort of question, so this is sort of my work life crossing into my hobby life, which is that if you have a problem, the first step you need to understand is what actually is what is the problem? Like, what is the details that surround this problem, right? So in our case, step 1 is to understand if you feel like, oh, I'm not getting enough kills, right? The first thing you should be asking yourself is, okay, but why do you say that? Like, what form does this actually take? So it might seem obvious, but like, really take a second to think about it. Is it because you are not fast enough on the draw? So you see someone and you go to shoot them, but they shoot you first. Or is it that you shoot at them, but you don't hit them because your marksmanship sucks? Or is it that you don't actually see them at all? Like you're just blind as a bat. And then for you constantly get hit by like snipers in the bushes and you never see them or whatever. Like all of those situations are possible, but they all will require different solutions.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
Like if you can't hit shit because you don't know how to shoot, well then that's a different problem than I can't see my opponents. And in the case of this particular Discord user, they did tell us that they primarily play in a very wooded environment, which I can totally relate to, because here in the summer it's very much like that. It's, you know, our brush is very dense, and they said, well, you know, it's hard. Like I can barely see anybody. So obviously, like, we're not going to get into like the full discussion here, because I think this is a huge question. Like, there's so much.
I have easy advice for you. Just go drop $5,000 on a thermal optic, and you'll be fine.
$5,000 on a thermal. Wow, but I don't know where you're living. But I think maybe what we can do is approach it from the perspective really of who is asking this question and understanding what they're going to need. So this is a person who's played 3 games. So like, we can tell them, and I think on the Discord they got lots of advice about like camouflage and concealment and all this kind of stuff. Fair enough, all fair play. But I think, what is the practical advice that you would give someone who is brand new to airsoft? They may not even have decided whether they're going to fully invest in this hobby and or spend $10,000 on a thermal optic yet. What is the practical advice that we could give someone? And I think it would kind of be the same advice that we would have given players in our community when we used to play at Redcliffe all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we played for, honestly, more than half of our career playing airsoft. We played in dense coniferous forest was the majority of the field, right? Like, so shooting into dense brush is pretty common. So like, off the cuff, like I'd normally be like, okay, so like, what kind of replica are you using? You know, what parts have you got in it? Not in a like, go upgrade your replica is the first thing, but just in a, I want to know what it's doing so that I can advise you well. You know, so like, I think like if you're playing in a dense forested area, you know, do you have camo? Because an OD jumpsuit from like the nearest army surplus will genuinely help your getting hit out of the game so that you can get more people out. You know, be chill, be patient with yourself, and like grow your skill set is also honestly a pretty good piece of advice here.
Yeah, and I would say it actually applies. That same piece of advice actually applies tactically, which is like, be chill and be patient. Like in the woods, taking it slow is so important, right? Like, you make a lot of noise, right, when you're going through the woods.
Yep.
When you're moving around, like your gear is brushing up on stuff, the trees are making snapping noises, the branches underfoot, all this kind of stuff. And if you're zipping around the field, and I remember we had players like that who showed up every now and then to play airsoft, and they came from paintball, from speedball, and they're like barreling around the field, and you can hear them like a mile away. Well, maybe not a mile.
I'm going to shoot at that noise in those bushes because it's either a player or a moose.
Yeah. So I think one of the big things I would say to any beginner, if you're playing in a heavily like wooded area, is just chill for a second, take time. Take it slow. Don't make too much noise. Like, you don't need to be like obsessed about not moving, because that's not helpful either. But there's a huge piece here around minimizing the noise that you make, but also in terms of helping you listen. Because if like one of the big things for us here is like this individual, if you can't see anything, like for us, we have a lot of these, and I don't know what the name of the plant is, so I'm not going to make anything up. But basically, these bushes they have a lot of like petals and stuff towards the mid and upper point.
They're alders.
Alders. Thank you. And then, but around like the lower level next to the ground, there's not so many branches. So there's been lots and lots of times playing up at Redcliffe where I would be prone, looking through the alders, and you could see people's ankles, right? And you know their shin or whatever, but you can't see the rest of them. But because it's lighter down there, you can see a little bit more.
Something. Well, stop shooting me in my feet.
Well, yeah,
like,
and
in all seriousness,
that's legit.
You know, if you're finding that like you have trouble punching through the brush, and that's a real problem. So assuming that you're not running like a gun that shoots really, really light, because it won't be able to do this well. But just swapping out your 0.2 gram BBs for 0.28s is sort of like
big difference.
They cut through, like they punch through brush a lot better because they have more kinetic energy left when they're trying to go through. They carry more of the energy with them. This is useful. It's actually genuinely a piece of practical advice. And they don't cost appreciably more. You know, so like, I think that probably covers the easy stuff.
Yeah, I would also say like, you're gonna need to move, right?
Yep.
And when you're moving through the brush, like I was mentioning, it does make noise. But there's another piece around movement, or around, like, I would say, not necessarily the moving around the field, but your body movements in general, around just being smooth and not being jerky, which is not the same thing as not being a jerk, which you should also not do. But like, if you think about being in the woods here, we have mosquitoes, black flies. I don't know if that's what they're called anywhere else, but we call them black flies. And so you can have an insect that lands on you while you're just sort of sitting there. And if the first thing you do is you try and swat it away with your hands, that's a big jerky motion that if someone is observing and looking for you, they may spot you. Whereas on the other hand, I mean, I get it. It's not super comfortable to watch a mosquito take a big old drink of your life's blood when it lands on your arm. But there's a big component here of, like, if you're going to, like, look around, not jerking your head left to right, but really just sort of slowly tilting your head one way, having a look with your eyeballs, slowly tilting your head the other way. Like, these are concepts and tips that you can apply with no dollar investment, right? People might say, oh, well, like you were saying, like, get some OD pants and an OD shirt. Absolutely. Get an OD, or if you can get woodland, perhaps,
Yep.
At a repro, like, that's fine, or at a surplus place, that's fine too. Get a boonie to break up your silhouette.
In the world,
like,
and it works great.
Like, all that is super helpful. But let's say you are going, if for some reason you are listening to this podcast and you're going to a game tomorrow and you don't have time to go to a store, what can you do? Well, take it slow, minimize as much noise as possible, keep your movements nice and smooth, and listen.
Yep.
Right? Really, really listen.
And, like, to be honest with you, take the time after you're finished watching this video and listening to our podcast or whatever, to go watch some videos, because YouTube has them, on moving in the woods while hunting, on moving in the woods while doing brekkie, because those exist. They're basically the same skill set anyway. Watch where you're putting your feet. Watch what you're brushing up against. I'm not going to go super into depth here because, like, they're not skills I'm sterling at anymore. I'm very out of practice, but, like, it comes down to, like, there are ways to move in a forested environment that will minimize the amount of noise and silhouette breaking and stuff you do, and that'll help.
Yeah. And, if your situation, for example, is a reverse where you're playing speedball games or you're playing CQC or something like that, and same question, it's like, oh, I'm always getting kills. Well, I mean, it's a different set of skills that you need to be looking into, right? Like, if you're in CQC and you can't spot your opponents, well, I don't know what they're doing, because you definitely should, because they're going to be hanging around buildings or corners or whatever. But then, the skill sets become, okay, what are your personal skills? Like, are you doing your ready ups? Like, how good are you at, like, bringing your rifle up on target, acquiring a sight picture, pulling the trigger? Like all of those things are the fundamental concepts. And those might be less important if you're playing. They definitely were less important when we played at Redcliffe compared to what they're like now.
100%.
We play a lot of that, right? But all of this is sort of predicated on the notion that you're going to want to continue, playing airsoft, because and what I mean by that is, if you're going to be doing ready ups, right? Ready ups before your next game, I mean, will help a little bit, but really it's in the long run, right? It's not doing 50 or 60 of them that is going to make a big difference.
You're training muscle memory for a longer term benefit.
Like, by the time you've done 1,000, then you're like, okay, cool. But, like, if this is game 3 for you, you might not be invested to the tune of 1,000 ready ups, right?
If this is game 3 for you, you shouldn't be.
unless you're like Jordan, who had done like 5 million ready ups before his first game.
I mean, sure, but like I guess mostly like
the average
mostly
person,
like if you're like, all right, so like I played last Saturday, I played this Saturday coming is my third game, I should have done 1,000 ready ups. I think you've missed our message.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I mean, there, especially in the woods, like there's so many opportunities to spot your enemies, opposing players in other ways than just the visual. The auditory is big time. Like, airsofters are not quiet by and large. They love talking about stuff. They love talking about the gear they have. They're shooting the shit with their teammates, whatever it is, and you can use that to your advantage to spot them.
Yep.
And once you have an idea of where they were, then at least later on, 5 minutes later, if you hear more noises, you can sort of extrapolate, oh, that was those guys and that's where they are now, or what have you. So really keeping yourself quiet so you can hear your opponents more is very easy to apply. It costs you $0. and you just need to remember to do it.
I'll toss in there, like, leave the heavily scented like Axe body spray and stuff at home.
Oh yeah, we talked
Like,
about
we
that
mentioned
before.
it before,
Yeah.
but like, I genuinely have like walked past something and gone,
yeah. You can definitely, or like people smoking cigarettes or whatever. Like, it's not natural smells, and you can pick them up. But the hearing is the big one,
totally.
especially if by your own admission you can't even see them. So yeah. All right, so that is it for our questions. As a quick closing reminder, a reminder about our Discord community day, or not really just Discord community, but Storm Riders community in general, whether you are on Discord or not. But it will largely feature the Discord. It is going to be on Saturday, August the 5th. Like we mentioned, there'll be lots of different activities across all time zones. There'll be some free swag we'll be giving away. So if you're interested in checking it out, then you can certainly join the Discord if you're not a member already. If you're looking to suggest some things that you would like to do with us on the community day, do let us know in the suggestions channel. It's if we don't like an idea, like, feel free to suggest it. Like, the worst we can say is no.
Totally.
Right. We are, we're really chill. We got, we're open to anything. So put it in there, see what's up. And yeah, that's all we've got for you this week. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great week.